Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, we're back in Belgrade. I hope everything is working well. Can you hear me all right? Good. Thanks. Well, we left off the last time we were talking about practices, how to cultivate loving kindness, but we also got interrupted a few times. So I'm not sure that I said everything that I need to say, and maybe one can never say enough about this, because it is the great, the single most important emotional structure for a human to cultivate. If they can't get at least some version of it, at least partial expansion of goodwill, then they will have missed the experience of being fully human. So to be fully human is to have some encounter with the recognition that other beings also share your experience, that their interior life is similar to yours, and they all appreciate kindness. They also fear violence, and they fear death. So this is one of the things that are in common with all beings. So when we cultivate this emotion of loving kindness, then we start to see that we break down the barrier of our individuality and our separateness. So, you hear about mystical experiences where somebody realizes everything is all one. And this is a very interesting realization, but it's got to have consequences that are profitable and effective. And so if it doesn't give you the sense that we appreciate and understand the desire for other beings for their safety and their non-injury, then we will not have profited from the experience. Sometimes people talk about enlightenment and this experience or that experience, mystical experience, very important experience. And sometimes they wonder what happened to them, or did they have, is this experience important, etc. How do we know about the value of these experiences is basically what happens afterwards. How are you afterwards? It might be a very dramatic experience, but it's not really valuable if it doesn't affect the rest of your life, if it's not transformative and continue in time. So if you're curious about your own experiences, maybe you had some insights or realizations when you were 15 or when you were 20 or when you were 40, and you wonder what it was on the spectrum of these spiritual experiences or psychological experiences, what that was. You should ask a different question. You should ask only, how has this changed me? How has this transformed me? So this is one way of shaping the experience. If you look into the Buddha's description of any of these stages of enlightenment, what he describes is what a kind of a permanent transformation which happens later. He doesn't talk much about the experience itself. It's a very brief experience and really can't be described, and maybe it's not important, but it's what happens afterwards. So there is the moment of the experience, and then there's the fruit of the experience, the resultants of these experiences. And those experiences are not merely a glimpse into other realms or a new kind of psychic capacity, or anything like that. The value of these experiences are really, how human are you now? Has your heart opened? Do you appreciate the feeling of life? Has the complexity, the fear, the stress, the anxiety, has that been reduced in your life? Can you feel that you're unburdened? Are you less fearful of death, etc.? This is also a characteristic not only of the so-called stages of enlightenment, but also loving kindness. So the Buddha has a list of benefits from loving kindness, the practice of loving kindness. It's a short sutta, not the Metta Sutta. I'm sure you've all heard the Metta Sutta, and we talked about some of the features of it, but there's another sutta which is very short, and we recite it here. I came across it. It's not necessarily in the chanting books of the other monasteries, but I found it very profitable, and it's called the 11 Benefits of Loving Kindness. It's a nice list of 11 benefits. If you want to look it up, you can look it up in the numbered sayings, and it'll be under the 9s. No, just kidding. It's under the 11s. The 11 benefits of loving kindness, one of them is that if you cultivate loving kindness, the fear of death and confusion nearing the time of death will be less. There is a reduction of the fear of death by the practice of loving kindness. Isn't that interesting? Why is that? Why would there be a connection between love and death? I think we all probably have read some heavy-duty philosophical books and novels with that in the title, Love and Death. It makes a very nice one. Isn't there one by Thomas Mann, Love and Death? I think there's a Woody Allen movie called Love and Death as well. So love and death are very profound subjects, and what happens is that, why do we fear death to begin with? Part of it is the sense of a very isolated self which perishes. And so as we question the self, there's two ways to get over the fear of death, which comes out of a misunderstanding of the self, a improper grasp of the nature of one's own self. One of them is that if we can see the impermanent nature of the self, the changing, endlessly flowing, changing nature of the self, then we will have the proper view of self rather than a static self which persists through time. So if we have that, then the fear of the of the disappearance of oneself is much less, because one is disappearing all the time. New selves are coming into existence, old selves are going out of existence. There's an endless flow of selves, like a rapid series of still photos. So that's one way to overcome the fear of death. And by the way, our ultimate aim, this nirvana or nibbana, is also called the deathless, that which is where death is absent. So this must be understood not that you become immortal somehow, but this immortality is a new view of the self. What is it that's mortal? What is it that experiences death? A stone does not die, right? Stone has no fear of death. But the sense of self is jeopardized. The sense of self disappearing is the problem of death. There's fear rises out of that. So the more we examine the nature of the self, the more we will alter our sense of death and what it is to be alive. The other thing that happens is loving kindness expands the sense of self and allows you to recognize others as you, to recognize others as having the same basic qualities as you. In fact, it makes the mind, the human body, and all that it is to be a human, it makes it less personal. Strange, it makes it less personal. There's nothing really personal in your life. You have all kinds of, I'm sure you have all kinds of private issues that you don't want to discuss with others, or maybe some that you just want to discuss with your close friends, or even just with your psychiatrist, or with the monk. Same thing, psychiatrist, monk, same thing. If you know, I heard something by a psychiatrist. He said, everybody's crazy. And what's the definition of a normal person? It's just a person you don't know very well yet. So this impersonality is none of our secrets are all of our do we own. It's really nothing that other beings do not know. We know a lot about others. If we want to find out about others, we should look into our own minds, and we will understand others better. So there's something funny about meditation and going to solitary retreats and going to monasteries. Many people don't understand why a person would do that. They think, what is it? You don't like us, or you're just running away, or you can't socialize very well. They have all kinds of imaginary things like this, but in fact, as we go into solitude and are face to face with our own mind, we begin to understand not only ourselves, but as we understand ourselves, we understand others. If you do not understand yourself, you have no hope whatsoever of understanding anybody else. And you can't understand anybody else by looking at other people. You won't understand them, but you will understand them by understanding yourself. There's a psychologist in California who spent decades testing people with how well they can read other people's expressions, their facial expressions. And these are called micro-expressions. So he would show them pictures in a flash of human faces, looking at them. And he would ask the person to say what the person was expressing with that expression. It only goes by in a finger snap, in a flash like this. You see a face. So they asked, what are they expressing? And he asked people who should know, like policemen, judges, lawyers, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, school teachers, people who deal with people all the time and are supposed to be empathic and understanding. And they have various rankings on this. But he had two outstanding scores. Very interesting. Can you guess who those two people were? One was a Buddhist monk. He got virtually perfect score. And the other one was a lay meditation teacher. And what do they have in common? They have spent a lot of time alone meditating. The result of spending a lot of time alone meditating is not that you don't understand other people or that you're going away from other people, is you gain much deeper insight into what it is to be a human, because you're face to face with direct knowledge of your own mind. And this is the thing, we cannot see the other person's mind. You may hear about people who's supposed to be able to read other people's minds. And that's possible, perhaps. But in general, the Buddha says, how do you know another person? How do you know another person? You know them by what they say and what they do. And that only after a long time, and seeing them in different circumstances. So he doesn't say, oh, you know them by their mind. No, you know them only, the ordinary human can only know another human by what they say and how they act, and that only after a long time, and seeing them in various circumstances, in stressful circumstances and in easy circumstances, you start to know a person. But if there is another way to know a person, and that is only through the mind. And you can know what's going on in a person, but only to the degree that you yourself have understood what it is and how your own mind works. And this is what this surprise happens, is when you go to a retreat and you're face to face, perhaps for the first time, with your mind, and you can be very shocked by how difficult it is to control it, what it gets up to, and what it manufactures. And so this is, the more we meditate, the more comfortable we become with the true contents of the mind. So we're not just there to watch the mind, but we're also there to direct the mind, because we don't want to go through life just knowing about the mind. We want to know about the most beautiful aspects of the mind. We want to encounter new levels of being that are concealed from us, because we come into this life quite open to things, and we need a lot of training and education to enter different realms. So if we're not trained in art or music or literature or science, the door to that will be closed. We won't understand it. We won't be able to enter it. So it's only by understanding these things. So this is why we want to train and reveal the emotional spectrum through the profound emotions of goodwill. And also, we also hope to open another realm around the nature of the self and the problems of the self through reflection on its endless flow of change. So these things reveal and open new doors. We enter realms that a person who does not do this cannot enter. And these are realms, meaning realities that are every bit as real or more real than the physical reality around you. So this is the function of these, the cultivation of these emotions, and why they're so important. And also, I'm speaking to you today on Valentine's Day. So we're sending you a heart. I won't put it in my mouth now, but later. So yeah, right. This. So maybe one of the suggestions we had today was also that we often talk about metta, and I think it's very important to often talk about metta, which is not the kind of love which happens on Valentine's Day, although the actual, of course, the origin of Valentine's Day is from basically a monk or a religious practitioner who is in prison. So Valentine he becomes a saint after a while, but he's a Christian contemplative practitioner, but he ends up in jail. and he ends up sending letters to his friends from jail, and he signs it, "Your Valentine." But this Valentine has been taken up as a symbol of lovers. But this love that Saint Valentine is projecting, of course, is not romantic love, but metta, goodwill. Yeah. But there are other kinds of love that are important as well. And the fact that we have metta does not necessarily mean that we have only metta. And as most of you will be living in the household life and having relationships with not just everybody, but somebody in particular. And so Buddhism does not leave that out of the formula. There is relationship to not just all beings, but also to each being. So each being needs to be understood, and there's skillful ways of doing this. And the Buddha never expected everybody to go and become monks or nuns. And the vast majority of people will remain in the household life, but it's not, the beautiful experiences are not restricted only for monks and nuns, but can enter into the household life. And they should manifest in your personal relationships as well. So we don't want to overlook that. We need to, the Buddha talks about relationship, and he says, what's the purpose of this? So there's all kinds of reasons why people get together in romantic relationship and in a continuing domestic relationship. And the Buddha is very interesting in this. There's all kinds of motives at the time for marriage. Sometimes it's just a political marriage. A king marries his daughter to another king so you don't have wars or something, or you try to give your daughter away with a dowry, a bunch of money to somebody to maybe then it'll be beneficial, or need more people on the farm or something. Very practical reasons, but don't have much to do with affection. And the Buddha is very, very unusual at the time. He says that that's the reason why people should get together, is because they like each other, because hopefully they love each other. Not just in the way of loving kindness, but that they have a genuine attraction to each other and they have affection for each other. And that should form the basis of this. Now, not every relationship works out that way, and sometimes it takes a while to know another person, doesn't it? As the Buddha said, you know another person by what they say and what they do, and that only after a long time. So sometimes if you hadn't had enough time in a relationship, you don't really know the person. You get into the relationship and then slowly it unfolds. Also, people change in relationships, so not all relationships are harmonious. In fact, the Buddha does admit, he says that he thinks it's more rare that a relationship is really very, very good. Some people come to the Buddha and ask him, this is a group of couples, and they ask him about relationships. And he said, well, here's 4 kinds of relationships. The woman is a devil, and the man is an angel. The man is a devil, and the woman is an angel. They're both devils. They're both angels. The best one is when you're both angels. But notice it's only 1 out of 4 possibilities. So right away, the odds are against you. You got a much better. You got 3 out of 4. This is like throwing the dice. You got 3 out of 4 possibility of being only either all bad or even half bad, but only 1 out of 4 possibilities of it being truly very, very sweet. But for it to be truly very, very sweet, you both have to be angels. There's no way. One can't be a devil. So, and what is it to be an angel? Well, the word would be deva. And with deva, the deva can be applied to a human. Because we say that in ordinary language all the time, you know, so-and-so is an animal, so-and-so is a devil, so-and-so is a angel. Or sometimes so-and-so is a human, a real human, full human. When somebody is truly a full human, they're almost angelic, aren't they? There's something superhuman about them. And so they can use this word deva for this as well. A person can be manifesting the characteristics which would allow you to enter the divine realms. And what is metta? What is metta? It is called Brahma Vihara, the dwelling of the angels, the dwelling of the gods. So if one can find metta, loving kindness, one can enter and transform and know what it is to be in the dwellings of the gods. So we have to bring we can have a beautiful appreciation of each other's individuality. We can like the sound of a person's voice, the way they laugh, their sense of humor, their talents, their abilities. We can like all of these things, but in the background we have to have a fully cultivated sense of loving kindness as well. So because these things also are subject to change, we need to be able to appreciate a person even when they change. Some people come to me to talk about relationships. In fact, a lot of people come to me to talk about relationships. And they usually only have 2 complaints. Usually it's a woman complaining about her husband or her boyfriend. First complaint is, he never changes. Second complaint is, he's changed. Yeah, so it's hard to win. So when our problem is that they don't change or that they change, then we realize how precarious a perfect relationship is, because it's subject to this, so many conditions. So as we introduce these, a background where we see that the person is always human, no matter what their problems are, then we move up to a new level in relationship. Well, we can go back and forth between these 2 things. It doesn't mean that there's only one. We can go back and forth between these 2 things. And it doesn't mean that even the Buddha appreciated the individual qualities of people. So he didn't just, he had goodwill for all beings. Even his cousin Devadatta, who tried to kill him, he still had goodwill for him. But he really didn't appreciate some of the Devadatta's characteristics. But he also pointed out people's with remarkably good characteristics, and how beautiful good characteristics are. And so it's not that he couldn't appreciate things, or that we can't appreciate the differences in people. We can understand some things are admirable. There are skills and qualities and abilities, and we don't lose the capacity to evaluate these things. But at the same time, in the background, there's another level of appreciation where we can see each person, however skillful or unskillful they are, still they are subject to the laws of psychology of the mind, and they suffer, and they they experience suffering through the lack of skill. And that lack of skill is primarily rooted in ignorance. They just don't know any better. So this is the kind of two levels of that we can function in. Of course, unless you cultivate this quality of loving kindness, as well as the more ordinary appreciation of individual characteristics of people that you like and you are attracted to, you won't have the security and safety. But if you can cultivate this other level, this metta level, you will have much more stability and security in life. You won't be insecure. And that allows you to be less stressed. And then that also frees energies for positive emotions towards others as well. And this is why sometimes some stuff happens. If you do loving kindness a lot, you might find yourself having more people being attracted to you more. And this is actually, you have to be careful about this. Because you can switch back and forth between these two different modes. So we have to make sure that when we do practice this loving kindness, we become more endearing to others. People appreciate being around this. Even animals appreciate being around this quality. And so we have to be careful with this. So the two qualities function at the same time. And this is the case a lot in Dhamma. Sometimes we get focused that only one of these things can be present, but we can have different levels going on at the same time. Another area which I talk about a lot, and is part of this, what we call the 4 Brahma Viharas, 4 sublime divine abidings. We talked about metta. Of course, there's 3 others. Compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These in Pali, they're karuna, mudita, and upekkha. So we don't really need to talk in depth about karuna and mudita. That's compassion and sympathetic joy, the enjoyment of the celebration of other people's happiness. Why? Is because these are subcategories of metta, loving kindness. And so you'll see, by the way, you will see in Theravada Buddhism a very frequent mention of metta, of loving kindness. You'll also find a fairly frequent mention of upekkha, or equanimity, and you will find less often mention of compassion or sympathetic joy. In the Mahayana schools, like the Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh and these schools, you will hear a lot of mention of the word compassion and maybe less mention of the word loving kindness. So that school tends to feature this quality of compassion. Does that mean that we're missing compassion in the Theravada school? No, it's mentioned. But the thing is, compassion is just a partial feature of loving kindness. What is it? It's loving kindness for those who are suffering, explicitly suffering. And loving kindness itself is for all beings without regard to their experience. We don't ask, are you suffering, are you not? So here's an exercise to cultivate loving kindness. You imagine that a whole bunch of people behind a curtain. All you know is you can hear them breathing, you can hear them talking, you know there's a whole bunch of people there. But you don't know who the people are. All that they are is human. And so that's metta. You radiate to those people behind the curtain, but you can't see any of them. You don't know if they're tall or short, if they're fat or skinny, if they're old or young, or if they're ill or healthy, if they're happy or not. You don't know. All you know is there's a bunch of people. That's metta. Now we're going to put you in front of a curtain where everybody's kind of groaning in pain. And all you know is there's a bunch of people back there and they all seem to be suffering. Now you're going to have loving kindness, but you're going to know only one thing: they're all suffering. So you still don't know who they are, but you know they're in pain. And that's loving kindness for those who are in pain. So that is compassion. Now we'll put you in front of a curtain where you can hear that people are laughing and enjoying themselves and happy, celebrating. You don't know who it is, but you can hear the sound basic of joy and happiness. And now you're going to radiate metta for them, and that will come out as mudita. Loving kindness for those who are happy. But so these are two subcategories of metta. Metta, you don't know anything about the condition of the being. Compassion, you know only one thing: they're suffering. Mudita, joy in the joy of others, you know only one thing: they're happy. So these are, karuna and mudita are subcategories of the greater, a larger dimension, emotion of metta. When we select only one of these and emphasize it, such as compassion, we may have some problems. One problem is you might fall into grief. When you're focusing loving kindness on those who are suffering, you may start to suffer as well. You may grieve at other people's grief. But it's very, very important that you do not. Metta, how does loving kindness feel? If I ask you, so how does it feel when you feel full of love? How does it feel? Good or bad? And most people say good. If it feels good, then when you radiate loving kindness for those who are suffering, does it feel good? Yes, it must feel good. Otherwise, it's not loving kindness. So does compassion feel good or bad? It feels good. And therefore, you cannot join others in their grief and suffering. You do not join them in their suffering through grief. You join them with loving kindness. So you do not contribute more grief to the world. When others are suffering, you do not add to the suffering of the world by grieving with them. You warm the world up, and you yourself feel well and full of good feelings.
Even though others are suffering, you sympathize with their suffering with warmth, not with grief.
So this is very important to understand. Skillful use of this. In sympathetic joy, all that matters is that you have warmth for their joy. You're not likely to fall into any kind of grief when others... Of course, if you envy others, if you want to win instead of them, then you will not have loving kindness. You will fall into a negative mood.
The only danger for loving kindness, for sympathetic joy, is that you prefer that your personal friends are happy, that they win the contest, and not people that you don't know. So we have to feel happy in either case.
So I have invented a game called Buddhist Hockey. Buddhist Hockey. You can play it in Serbia as well. And it is that when you watch the hockey game on TV, if some of you have that terrible habit, you will cheer on when either side scores. You cheer. You cheer for both sides. And when somebody asks you what the score is at the end of the game, what was the score? You add the scores together. If it was 3 to 0, the score was 3. If it was 3 to 4, then the score is 7.
You just add the scores together, say, on 7 occasions, I was very happy.
Both teams, when anybody's happy, you're happy. So you cheer for both sides. People won't understand this, but this is Buddhist hockey, okay? If you want to understand this, occasionally this happens, where a mother has 2 sons, and they play on opposite teams, and they play against each other. So then the mother is always asked, who do you want to win? She can never hope for one winning over the other. She hopes both win. And each one, if one son scores, she celebrates. If the other son scores, she celebrates. She has perfect mudita. So this is what it is to have mudita, is that
When anybody is happy, you're happy for them. You don't restrict that. See? And then every time, you win every time. You never get disappointed at the end of the hockey game. Never. It's always good. Everybody wins.
And this is our third, I guess, Birken in Belgrade. And I'm going to leave it at this. It's the third one, so I'm only going to cover the first 3 of the divine abidings. I'm going to leave the 4th one, which is upekkha, equanimity, for the 4th Birken in Belgrade. Because this last one is very, very important. It is what makes a philosopher. If one has not equanimity, then one may have a warm heart, but does not have the big view of life. And so I will leave the upekkha for next time. We will talk about its relationship to other things as well. But I thought I would focus, today because Loving Kindness Day. Yeah. So we send you much metta, and from the people at Birken today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay, so we'll leave that today because it's too bad because I have a lot of good dating advice. Just kidding.
Okay, can I ask one question? Yeah. Hello, Brandon. I wanted to ask a question. Your first, I have waited for 3 or how much already talks. On your first talk, you told us to go to become a monk. You were going by the streets and looking at the bakers and other people working all the time. You remember that? And you said that you will feel, if I remember correctly, dead. Like if you're going to do that every day. Every day you go to the same work every time, 8 hours, go home, do same thing again and again and again. And I just wanted to ask you, how does that relate to your work now? You're working the same thing again and again. You wake up, you meditate, it's the same routine, but it's not work, it's almost the same. So what is the difference? Why do you not feel dead now, for example?
Yeah. Well, that story is, I was in my 20s, and I had not figured out the meaning of life or what to do with it. All I knew was that the way people live is they go to work at jobs quite often that are not all that rewarding, and they live at a very low level. They don't live at a very high level of life, and they don't understand their life, and they suffer a lot. And so my feeling was that you know, it's dangerous if you don't go to work, right? If you don't train and go to work and make money, how are you going to live? So if I decide as I'm walking down the street that I don't want to work in these stores, I don't want to spend all my time making money but not having time to understand life, it's going to be risky. How are you going to live without making money? These people they do these jobs not because they want to do them or like them, but because they have to. Otherwise, you don't have any money and no food, no place to stay. Because there are people on the street, you know. So what I'm thinking at the time is, if I don't do that, it's risky. But I think to myself, I will take the risk. I would rather take the risk. I don't know how I'm going to live. I don't know how I'm going to get the food and so forth. If I don't do that, how am I going to live? But I think it's worth it to take the risk, to have the time to find out what the point of this life is. I need to find this out. So that's my thought was, I'd rather risk dying and find out the meaning than to just play safe and go to a job that I don't like and not have any time to reflect. That's the choice. See, it's like a choice you make. So, now it's not about repetition. Now, this is the other thing about life, and this is very, very important. And I want to quote Kierkegaard. You know this, I've mentioned him before. He's a kind of a Christian existentialist philosopher. He says, repetition is the bread of life. Now, Dantika here, she makes great bread. And we have it every day. And I never get tired of it. Never. I never get tired of breakfast. I never get tired of lunch. I never get tired of sleeping. I never get tired of waking up. I never get tired of this. It's the bread of life. Repetition is the bread of life. And if you make a big mistake and you think, I want excitement all the time. You think variety is the spice of life. Variety maybe is the spice of life, but you cannot live on spices. You live on bread. You need some calories. You need some substance. And the substance is repetition. Every day you wake up in love with the opportunity to spend another day in absolute ordinariness. Because the skill of life is to love the ordinary, to love to walk across a room, to love to sit down, to love to open your eyes, to simply see, to smell, to taste, to touch, to think, to be ordinary, nothing special. It becomes special only if you love it. And what is love? And this is back to Valentine's Day. It's when you're interested and paying attention. And so people wait for special occasions. Only once they want to jump out of a plane and parachute, or they want to go to Hawaii and everything else is boring. Only that's going to be, they're waiting to live then. But that's a waste of time, a waste of life. So we invest heavily in paying attention, fully interested, and joy arises with interest. In this ordinary moment, this is great. I live in this little hut, little mini house, micro house. It's not very big, so, but I love it. I sit in front of the window, I look out, I'm at the snow, it's snowing a little bit today. I'm looking forward to looking at the snow, watching the snow. I mean, I'm born and raised in Canada where it snows all the time. You think I have enough of it by now. But I still love to just watch the snow come down. And take me a long time to come, because when I was a child, I loved to just lean on the windowsill, look out at the snow. I loved that. But then I didn't love it for 20 years. Everything was boring. But now I love it again. I can sit there and look at the snow. I enjoy myself in the absolute ordinariness of life. So this is very, very important. What a shame to only wait for exciting moments to enjoy your life. You want to enjoy the absolute ordinariness of life. And most people have to go to work, and it's repetitive, so you should not be bored with it. You must make it. If that's what you do, then be alive and awake in this ordinary experience of going to work. Okay. So this is now the end of the hour. We're going to eat in 4 minutes as usual. And we wish you well.
We wish you well.
Thank you. That's a good one.